I've been sitting here for a little bit trying to think of a good introduction for this album, and I can't really come up with anything, so let's just dive into it. Land of Green and Gold by Karfagen. So Karfagen is a Ukrainian progressive rock band. 2006-ish was their first album, and they've put out 13 albums up to this point, which really is saying something. And they're always of varying degrees of quality, mainly on the good side, But I've always felt like Karfagen never really... I don't know, like they did really great retro prog, but I wouldn't necessarily count them as like groundbreaking in any kind of form. I always felt like they were putting out very pleasant, very accessible retro prog. So they never really tried to break the mold. They never tried to push the boundaries. They never really tried anything spectacularly new, but I never was bored in their albums. I was always very excited. They were very similar to a lot of their contemporaries, like the Flower Kings, like Moon Safari, and even kind of going back and wearing their influences on their sleeves of bands like Camel and Yes, those very celebration of sound styles of music. And yeah, I got on board with them with Echoes from Within Dragon Island back in 2019 and fell in love with Birds of Passion, the follow-up from 2020. And since then, I've listened to the Principles and Theories of Sepulchra. I'm always really bad with that, as well as the first album of Sepulchra back in 2016. So this band is being kind of the driving force with Anthony Karfagen. Again, Ukrainian artist, and my heart goes out to Ukraine. Guys, please, stay safe as much as you can. And yeah, it's just, I'm lost for words. So yeah, huge support to Ukraine in these really troubled times. But Anthony has gone off on his own, and he actually in 2021 put out 3 albums. And most of them, Marshmallow Moon Dust, Stellar Garden, and Chameleon Shapeshifter, they were great. Again, kind of continuing the flow that was Karfagen. Very celebration of sound, very symphonic prog in a retro sense. And I found myself loving these guys, longer stretches of music, but I didn't really feel like there was any real payoff for the longer stretches. I just felt like it was just kind of noodling around, testing the landscape, seeing what was there, but not really unearthing anything extremely special. And so now we come into their next work of Land of Green and Garden, of specifically a Karfagen album. And unlike past works like, say, Birds of Passage, where you would have these really, really long stretches of songs, in the 20-minute mark, this one has chapter 1, 2, and 3 kind of splitting up the album a little bit, starting us off with Kingfisher and Dragonflies, part 3. I don't know if there was a part 1 or 2. It's definitely not found on this album, and I didn't see them on any of the other albums. And it does a great way of just kind of opening the tracks up, very instrumental, very soothing piece before we get into Land of Green, part 1 to Solus Festum, Lands of Green, part 3, and then Pastoral. And these 6 tracks do a really good job of opening up the album. The longest track on here is Lands of Green, part 1 at 11 minutes, and I do love the ebb and flow of these tracks. They provide, about 20 minutes worth of very enjoyable, very fun music. And I found myself really getting into it and really enjoying it in this one. I like the ebb, as I mentioned, the ebb and flows. It's very music first. There's a little lyrics here and there, but generally it's staying very close in the vein of Camel within the mid-70s, where it was very orchestral, very music first in that case. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of big crescendo moments, like there's no big payoffs, but the music that's found around it is pleasant enough, and I find myself kind of grooving around to it. Now, I do like Chapter 3, Land of Gold, probably the better part of this album, starting off with Garden of Hope Part 1 and Land of Gold. And then we have like the Land of Jazz, which are the bonus tracks, Garden of Hope Part 2, Land of Jazz, and then Land of Jazz outro. But yeah, the Land of Gold, which starts off with the Garden of Hope Part 1 being about 7 minutes, and then going into Land of Gold, a 13-minute track. This provides another 20 minutes worth of just breathtaking music, specifically with the handoff between what was set up in Garden of Hope and then that kind of was paid off in Land of Gold. And I'm loving in Land of Gold the different landscapes that we find ourselves in and the plethora of different musics that we have on here. Like, I love some of the more larger sounds that are utilized by an organ, or at least a synthesizer being used as an organ. And I'm loving that bigger sound that like a Yes would have from, going for the one in that case. And I love the more of like a pastoral landscapes at times too, with this larger symphonic sounds that we have on this album. And really, the guitar works that are found about the midpoint of Land of Gold is really soaring. Like, it's feeling like flavors that Roland Stolt would have for the Flower Kings. It's the big soundscapes that we have. It's very large in that case. It takes up a lot of space, but it never overshadows some of the keyboard works that are on here. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate with this, is the interplay between the guitar works and the keyboards. None really overshadow the other, and really each one is a complementary to the other. And so the last third of this album, the Land of Jazz with Land of Jazz, Garden of Hope Part 2, and Land of Jazz outro. It's a great way to end the album off. I don't feel as though, they went out with a bang or anything. It just kind of like floated along the same kind of trajectory that the other tracks had up to that point. So yeah, in the end, Land of Green and Gold was still a pretty good time. I will say that much like a lot of Karfagen and Anthony's work, there wasn't a whole lot to like really dig my teeth into. I didn't feel all that satisfied with any of the build-ups or payoffs. I just felt like it was very, very pleasant when I was in the runtime of the album, but I didn't really feel myself all that excited during and after the actual listening experience. And that probably just comes with the territory. There were moments in past albums where my ears would perk up and I'd be like, ooh, this is getting onto something really tasty. Just gonna wait for that plow to go by. But there wasn't quite enough for me to be hungry for this album after I've listened to it. Like there wasn't anything that was just like, ooh, I really want to revisit this one particular moment, because of all the music on here works very, very well in what they're setting out to do. But I just didn't feel myself all that excited for what's on here. I would much rather go back and listen to, say, Birds of Passage, or something from Echoes from Within Dragon Island, or even check out Anthony's work himself. Like, I thought that the album that he put out at the end of 2021 of Chameleon Shapeshifter, I think it was, that one, the beginning part of that album just really surprised me in that case. So yeah, I guess in that case, I will say that Land of Green and Gold by Karfagen is one that I would still probably download. But yeah, that's all I've got for this album. What did you guys think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. And I think that's all I've got. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.